Step outside right now. Whatever the weather is doing out there, it isn't doing it to you. The wall blocks it. The glass holds. The heating pushes back the moment the temperature drops. For 300,000 years before you, that line did not exist. There was no inside. There was the body, and there was the cold trying to kill it. At the peak of the last ice age, temperatures on the Eurasian steppe hit -40. Skin starts to die in minutes. Breathing burns. A modern person dropped into that world without preparation would be dead before sunrise. You were told they survived because of fire. Cavemen, a flame, made it through. It's wrong. Fire on an open steppe is a candle in a hurricane, warms one side of you while the other freezes. And on a treeless plain, the fuel for it doesn't grow. So, if fire wasn't the answer, what was? The answer is something modern Arctic engineers with billion-dollar budgets and synthetic insulation are only now catching up to. Act 1. Going underground. At a site called Kostenki in modern Russia, archaeologists discovered circular depressions dug into the earth. Up to 8 feet deep, 12 feet across. Tool marks in the frozen soil prove these were deliberate. Why 8 feet? Because at that depth, the ground temperature stays roughly 25 degrees warmer than the air above it. All winter, regardless of what the storm is doing on the surface. They didn't fight the cold, they went underneath it. Before lighting a single flame, they had already won most of the battle. The Earth itself is the largest thermal battery on the planet. That's not a survival instinct. That's geothermal engineering, 30,000 years ago. Act 2. The layered wall. At Dolní Věstonice in what is now the Czech Republic, dated to roughly 26,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered winter shelters with walls built from multiple distinct layers, each with a specific thermal job. Innermost, animal hide, fur facing inward, trapping warm air against the body. Outside that, dried grass and moss, absorbing moisture before it could reach the hide. Outermost, woven reed and bark, wind-resistant but porous enough to let water vapor escape, because if moisture stays inside, it freezes and destroys the structure from within. Read that again. Innermost layer traps warm air, middle layer manages moisture, outermost layer blocks wind but breathes. That is the exact engineering principle behind the modern winter jacket you put on this morning. The same principle inside the walls of your house. Inner vapor barrier, insulation, outer weatherproofing. Different materials, same physics. Your ancestors had figured out the entire thermodynamic stack of modern building science, with stone tools 26,000 years before the word insulation was invented. When modern Arctic engineers tested reconstructions of these shelters, they performed within a few degrees of modern industrial alternatives. We didn't improve the design, we just changed the materials. Act 3. Houses made of mammoth. Now here's where it stops being clever and becomes extraordinary. In Ukraine and southern Russia at sites like Prehistoric, researchers uncovered actual buildings. Engineered structures built entirely from woolly mammoth bones. Mammoth skulls, each weighing over 200 pounds, used as foundation blocks. Curved tusks forming dome frameworks. Hundreds of smaller bones interlocked into load-bearing walls. The whole structure covered in carefully stitched layers of mammoth hide, thick enough to block wind, shaped to shed snow. A single mammoth bone house used remains from dozens of animals, harvested over years. These weren't temporary shelters. They were permanent structures built to outlast a lifetime. And the bone itself mattered. The internal structure of a mammoth femur is a natural lattice. Dense outside, porous inside, strong enough to bear weight, light enough to lift into position. Modern engineers have noted the construction principle resembles composite materials more than traditional masonry. Inside one of these structures, without a single flame, the temperature was already significantly warmer than outside, just from the way the building blocked wind, shed snow, and captured body heat. Act 4. The body as the last layer. Shelter was only half the system. Ice Age clothing wasn't a single garment. It was a composite system designed exactly like the shelter. Multiple layers of different animal hides, each chosen for a specific property. Wolf fur, fox, Arctic hare, reindeer. Inner layers to trap warm air, middle layers for moisture, outer layers for windproofing against ice and snow. This isn't guesswork. Bone needles dating back over 40,000 years have been found across Europe and Asia. Some carved so finely they would still function today. The tools to make sewn, fitted, multi-layer clothing existed deep in the Ice Age. Strip a modern Arctic explorer of their gear and give them only what a person at Measurich had. Sewn furs, layered hides, a structurally insulated dwelling, and they would still survive the winter. possibly more comfortably than expected. Act 5, the freezer and the plan. There was one more system most people never hear about: food storage. In permafrost regions, your ancestors dug chambers connected to their shelters by short tunnels. These chambers stayed below freezing year-round. Meat stored inside remained frozen and edible throughout the winter, even during weeks-long storms when no one could hunt. This is a freezer. Engineered into the earth using nothing but geology and an understanding of soil temperature. The same technology keeping your food edible was, in principle, already operating in 25,000 BC. And the planning extended further. Building a mammoth bone house took 2 to 3 weeks of intensive work, with 8 to 10 adults in finite daylight with every calorie accounted for. That meant construction had to begin in late summer, months before winter arrived. Your ancestors were running long-range planning calendars in their heads, preparing for a cold they couldn't yet feel. That ability to imagine a future discomfort and spend present effort preventing it is one of the defining features of the modern human mind. It was forged here. Act 6. The knowledge we lost. When the Ice Age ended, the climate warmed and this entire system of knowledge was gradually abandoned. Not lost to disaster, just no longer needed. The pit houses were filled in. The bone architecture weathered away. The fitted clothing simplified. And the people who knew how to engineer warmth from nothing died, and their grandchildren grew up in a world where none of it was necessary. Within a few thousand years, almost all of it was gone. It took modern science centuries to figure it out again. This time with synthetic materials, computational modeling, and university departments full of thermodynamicists. And when they finally reconstructed what your ancestors had been doing, the response was uncomfortable. We hadn't improved on the design. We had just rediscovered it. Military Arctic survival programs now study Paleolithic shelter construction. Disaster relief organizations have adapted Ice Age techniques for emergency use. The principles that kept your ancestors alive in conditions that would kill you within hours are now taught to elite soldiers as cutting-edge training. Warmth isn't modern. It's inheritance. 30,000 years of engineering, paid for in cold and bone by people who never knew you existed. The thermostat on your wall is the last page of a story that started with someone on a frozen plain deciding exactly how deep to dig. Not noticing the weather is the achievement. Someone earned that for you a very long time ago.